took a toll on Mike. It took a toll, and then
Gary Payton never hid his feelings about anyone. He talked on the court, off the court, before games, after games, and sometimes in the middle of practice. If a player bothered him, the whole league heard about it. Today, we break down the 9 rivals Payton openly admitted he hated the most, starting with the rivalry that shaped Gary Payton more than any other.
I wouldn't even respect him if he would have said,
Michael Jordan was the one opponent who brought out Payton's sharpest edge and loudest fire. Payton never backed down from anyone in the league, but he took special pride in being one of the few guards who consistently talked back to Jordan. That alone created sparks, because Jordan dominated every matchup and every conversation. Yet Payton refused to play along with the fear most players had. Instead of stepping aside, Payton leaned into the challenge, talking from tip-off until the final buzzer, dragging Jordan into a verbal war that Jordan usually started but rarely had to maintain. Payton kept the noise going play after play, and that annoyed Jordan to the point where the battles became personal. The 1996 finals took everything to another level. Payton's energy and defense shifted the tone in Game 4 and Game 5. Jordan had his moments, but Payton disrupted his rhythm more than most defenders ever did. Years later, when The Last Dance documentary showed Jordan laughing off Payton's impact, Payton responded publicly and made it clear that the film left out important details. He insisted Jordan knew he had to work for every shot, and Payton believed the series would have been different if he had been assigned to guard Jordan from Game 1. Payton never liked the way the narrative was framed, and that frustration followed him for decades. It was never hatred for Jordan the man, but hatred for the story told about that matchup. Payton always respected Jordan's greatness, yet he hated the idea that his own defensive pressure was erased from the memory of that finals, moving next to another star who matched Payton word for word. Reggie Miller created a rivalry built entirely on noise, movement, and constant irritation. Payton loved real competition, but Miller had a special way of getting under his skin. Their games always turned into full conversations, usually with Payton sparking the first comment and Miller firing back with equal heat. Payton once joked that Miller would talk to a brick wall if it answered back. Miller kept moving on screens, pushing off, baiting defenders, and selling contact in ways that drove Payton crazy. Pacers and Sonics games never stayed calm because both men refused to let the other control the pace or the conversation. They picked up technical fouls, shoved each other after whistles, and carried grudges into the next meeting. What made the rivalry stand out was how evenly matched the energy was. Miller had a knack for annoying defenders with off-ball movement, while Payton hounded him with physical pressure and endless talking. Both admitted later they tried to irritate each other every time they met. Payton said Miller was the one player he genuinely hated guarding because the running, bumping, and chattering never stopped. Miller said Payton was the only guard he faced who never stopped talking even during free throws. Their battles built a strange form of respect, but that respect sat deep under all the irritation. Payton did not dislike Miller the person. He disliked the experience of guarding someone who seemed designed to bother him for 48 minutes. Shifting to a teammate who brought out a different kind of heat.
Seeing this cat on this other team, man, he's playing for Seattle. I'm ready.
Shawn Kemp created tension inside the locker room rather than across the court. Kemp and Payton formed one of the most exciting duos of the 1990s, but their partnership came with arguments, disagreements, and long stretches of frustration. Payton admired Kemp's talent and explosive ability. He also believed Kemp could have reached an even higher level if he maintained the discipline Payton expected. Payton had a strict mindset when it came to practice habits and preparation, while Kemp approached the game with more spontaneity. That difference started friendly, but eventually grew into open conflict.
that's the truth. I was more mad at Shawn when he left.
Payton said many times that Kemp made him angry because Kemp would show up late to practices or drift through stretches of the season without the focus Payton wanted. Kemp saw Payton differently. He believed Payton was controlling and pushed him too hard. Despite all that noise, their on-court chemistry stayed strong. They read each other's movements instinctively and built the Sonics' identity around speed, energy, and transition pressure. Payton and Kemp made highlight plays almost every game, and fans rarely saw the arguments happening behind the scenes. When Kemp's career began to decline due to conditioning and personal struggles, Payton was frustrated with how quickly it happened. He felt Kemp lost some of his prime years to habits that could have been fixed. Kemp later admitted the criticism hurt him, but he understood where it came from. Their relationship eventually softened, and the tension faded with age. Payton still says Kemp is one of the teammates he loved, but also one of the people who made him the angriest during his career. It was a bond built on brotherhood and conflict at the same time. And Payton speaks about Kemp with a mix of admiration and frustration only long-term teammates fully understand. Next up is one of the most contrasting matchups of Gary Payton's entire career.
Up right to Jason Williams. Williams crosses over, loses Gary, drives into the lane.
Jason Williams became a personal target for reasons that reached far beyond the usual trash talk. Payton played basketball with structure, calculation, and rhythm. Williams played with flair, risk, and creativity. Payton respected talent, but he despised anything he considered unnecessary flash. That alone put Williams high on his list of players who irritated him. Williams brought no-look passes, behind-the-back crossovers, and highlights, plays that pushed the boundaries of what NBA coaches tolerated. Payton looked at those same plays and saw disrespect for the fundamentals he believed the game was built on. Their tension exploded almost immediately. During the 1999 season, the Kings and Sonics played several heated matchups. Payton barked at Williams for every risky pass. Williams fired back with his style, refusing to change for anyone. The two got into multiple shouting matches, and both players walked away from those games with emotions still running hot. Payton saw Williams as someone who needed discipline. Williams saw Payton as someone trying to take away the creativity that made him special. This clash created a rivalry that had nothing to do with playoff history or championships. It was about pure basketball philosophy.
He's not afraid to play against anybody, and he makes eye contact with...
Payton took special pride in shutting Williams down whenever they met. Williams struggled against Payton's strength, pressure, and defensive timing more than he struggled against most other guards. Williams later admitted Payton was the hardest defender he ever faced because Payton never let him get comfortable. Payton mocked the turnovers that came from Williams pushing the limits of his game, and he enjoyed forcing him into more traditional playmaking because it felt like a personal victory. These games became must-watch moments for fans. The crowd loved seeing discipline against creativity. Payton turned every possession into a statement, and Williams kept trying to respond with the same freedom that made him famous. Eventually, the rivalry softened. Williams matured and became more controlled, especially after joining Miami and winning a championship in 2006. Payton was on that team as well. Their relationship changed from confrontation to respect, and their personalities balanced over time. Payton still jokes about how much Williams irritated him when he was younger, but he also praises Williams for adapting and growing later in his career. For Payton, it is a rivalry that represents how players evolve and how relationships can shift from conflict to respect as time passes. Now on to someone Payton disliked for the exact opposite reason.
I've been getting a lot of slack for this guy here.
John Stockton represented the quiet, disciplined, and consistent style that irritated Payton because it never cracked under pressure. Payton loved battles with loud talkers because he could always find a way to break their confidence. Stockton offered nothing to work with. He never responded. He never argued. He never reacted to trash talk. Payton could yell at him all game, and Stockton would walk away as if he did not hear a word. That calmness annoyed Payton more than anything else. Stockton played in a way that tested Payton's patience and mental toughness every possession. The problems did not stop there. Stockton set some of the hardest screens in NBA history. Many guards considered his screens illegal. Payton was one of the loudest critics. He believed Stockton leaned, grabbed, extended elbows, and used angles that the referees ignored because Stockton had a reputation as a clean player. Payton hated that double standard. He felt Stockton got away with plays that others would be punished for. This created even more resentment because Payton had to fight through screens that came with real physical impact, often catching elbows and hip checks that slowed his momentum. The Sonics and Jazz met in tough playoff series throughout the 1990s, including heated matchups in 1996 and 1997. Stockton remained composed in every game, and that stability became a weapon Payton could never fully disarm. Payton often said Stockton made the right play every single time. Even when Payton forced him into tight spots, Stockton stayed patient and found a way to exploit the smallest mistake. Payton hated guarding him because Stockton was impossible to disrupt. Yet inside that frustration was the highest respect Payton could offer. He said Stockton was the toughest guard he ever faced and the one opponent he could never mentally break. The rivalry developed into admiration after retirement. Payton acknowledged that Stockton's style and discipline pushed him to become better. Stockton spoke highly of Payton's tenacity and competitive spirit. Their relationship became a symbol of how two opposite personalities can build a rivalry defined by skill rather than noise. Payton still includes Stockton near the top of every list he makes. Not because of personal dislike, but because the battles demanded everything from him mentally and physically. Turning now to one of the most explosive guard matchups of the 1990s.
When I got there, they was telling me, man, watch this motherfucker now, you can't.
Vernon Maxwell brought a level of chaos that matched Payton's fire and sometimes pushed it even further. Payton met plenty of trash talkers, but Maxwell was on a different level. Maxwell talked with an intensity that went beyond competition. Payton once said Maxwell talked crazier than anyone in the league. When the Rockets and Sonics met, the conversation started early and rarely stayed within the boundaries of standard trash talk. Both players approached the game with a desire to break opponents mentally, and neither wanted to back down from the other. This created matchups that felt like emotional battles as much as basketball contests. Their teams also added fuel to the rivalry. The Rockets and Sonics shared one of the fiercest competitions in the Western Conference during the mid-1990s. Both teams had championship aspirations, and their styles clashed at every level. Payton's physical perimeter pressure collided with Maxwell's attacking mindset. Every screen, every drive, and every defensive rotation came with extra contact. Technical fouls were common, and players often had to be separated. Payton enjoyed these battles because they tested his toughness, but Maxwell's unpredictability made the rivalry feel more dangerous than most. Payton talked, often about how Maxwell crossed lines during verbal battles. Maxwell fired back with personal comments that matched Payton's intensity. Payton responded in kind. Both players wanted to dominate the emotional side of the game, and it turned every meeting into a high-pressure environment. The referees struggled to keep control because neither player accepted warnings or reprimands. Payton hated Maxwell because Maxwell refused to let anyone else determine the emotional tone of a game. Maxwell played with the same stubbornness Payton carried, which meant their rivalry became a mirror of their shared personalities. As both men aged, the rivalry gradually cooled into respect. Payton said Maxwell was one of the few players who truly challenged him mentally and physically. Maxwell praised Payton for his relentless pressure and leadership. They both acknowledged the tension, but also understand that those battles shaped their reputations. Payton's hatred toward Maxwell was born from conflict, but the respect that followed shows how fierce competition can evolve when the careers settle and the emotions fade. Up next is rivalry that many fans forget, but Gary Payton never let go of.
I heard Horace.
Horace Grant became one of the few teammates Payton openly disliked from inside his own locker room. Grant arrived in Seattle with championship rings, years of experience under Phil Jackson, and a reputation as a steady veteran presence. Payton expected that kind of pedigree to translate into fire, urgency, and leadership. Instead, the first impression Payton got was the opposite. Grant carried himself with calm professionalism, which Payton saw as indifference. Payton wanted teammates who matched his intensity. Grant played the game with patience, and that difference created friction the moment they began sharing the court. Reports from the 1999 and 2000 seasons showed the tension clearly. Beat writers described practices where Payton barked instructions, and Grant responded with quiet annoyance. Payton believed Grant acted like he was above the rest of the roster. Grant believed Payton spoke too aggressively and demanded too much from teammates who had their own styles. This personality clash never settled, and that frustrated Payton even more. He wanted Grant to challenge him directly, to engage, to show fire. Instead, Grant stayed level, and that steadiness irritated Payton because he interpreted it as a lack of intensity. The chemistry issues spilled into games. Payton pushed the pace and demanded precise rotations. Grant favored structure, communication, and slower adjustments. They often disagreed on defensive assignments and pick-and-roll coverages. Payton believed Grant should take on more responsibility. Grant believed the system needed balance rather than constant urgency. Payton wanted presence. Grant brought poise. The Sonics needed both, but the personalities never blended. Payton later said Grant was one of the few teammates he simply could not connect with in real time. As the years passed, both softened their stance. Grant said Payton was hard on teammates because Payton wanted to win at all costs. Payton said Grant contributed more than he admitted publicly, but frustrated him because Payton always felt Grant had another level he refused to show. Their tension became part of Payton's story of leadership, a reminder that even great teams deal with internal conflict. Payton never hated Grant's game. He hated the dynamic they fell into, a dynamic that showed how competitiveness can spark resentment even when both players want the same result. Moving next to the Hall of Fame guard, who brought a completely different kind of frustration.
He would, talk trash and you're gonna go home and cry.
Jason Kidd became one of the toughest matchups Payton ever faced. Payton prided himself on controlling the tempo against smaller guards. Kidd was not smaller. Kidd was strong, fast, and physical. He absorbed contact and kept moving. That forced Payton to adjust his usual strategy. Payton loved dominating opponents with pressure, but Kidd handled that pressure unlike anyone else. Kidd pushed the pace, attacked the paint, and used his size to create angles Payton struggled to close. Payton hated guarding him because Kidd demanded discipline for every single possession. Their battles stretched across the Western Conference long before Kidd moved to New Jersey. Suns versus Sonics games turned into fast breaks, transitions, and long possessions built around Kidd's vision and Payton's pressure. Both guards operated as floor generals, but their styles made the matchups exhausting. Payton had to fight through screens from big bodies. Kidd had to avoid Payton's trapping instincts. The games became a test of endurance and intelligence. Payton respected Kidd deeply, but hated the experience because Kidd made him work non-stop. The friction did not stop with regular season games. During the USA basketball years, the two clashed often. Payton said Kidd always tried to take control of huddles. Kidd said Payton talked so much he never had time to listen. They were both leaders. They were both vocal. They were both competitive. Those traits created natural tension, especially in environments where roles overlap. Payton admitted later that Kidd had a stoic arrogance that made disagreements sharper. Kidd rarely showed emotion. Payton showed emotion at full volume. Whenever they talked about strategy, the tone rose quickly and the room tensed. It was not personal hatred. It was two alpha personalities trying to steer the same ship. Their on-court rivalry stayed intense until the final years of their careers. Nets versus Sonics matchups in the early 2000s had the same energy as Suns versus Sonics in the late 90s. Kidd pushed the tempo. Payton tried to disrupt it. Kidd found shooters. Payton hunted for turnovers. Kidd never broke emotionally, which bothered Payton because Payton thrived on shaking opponents mentally. Kidd never cracked. So, stayed steady, and that steadiness created resentment inside Payton because Payton wanted psychological control. Kidd refused to give him any. Despite all the heat, their rivalry grew into genuine appreciation. Both entered the Hall of Fame. Both reflected on each other's influence. Payton said Kidd sharpened his defense more than any other point guard. Kidd said Payton pushed him to take better care of the ball and read the floor faster. The rivalry ended with mutual praise, but Payton never erased the irritation Kidd caused. Kidd remains one of the players Payton openly names when discussing opponents he disliked facing because Kidd refused to let Payton dictate outcomes on his terms. Closing this list with the one modern star who represents everything Payton criticizes about the current generation. Kevin Durant became the symbol of a basketball culture Payton does not fully agree with. Payton came from an era built on loyalty, long-term battles, and staying with teams through their rise and fall. Durant entered the league with the same competitive drive, but made career choices that Payton openly disagreed with. Nothing bothered Payton more than Durant leaving Oklahoma City for Golden State. Payton viewed that decision as taking the easier path toward a championship. Durant saw it as a strategic move to evolve his game and chase titles. Their perspectives never matched. Payton has said many times that he wanted stars to stay with the teams that drafted them. He believed players should fight through adversity and build legacies based on perseverance. When Durant joined a team that had already won 73 games, Payton saw it as a move that damaged the competitive balance of the league. He criticized the trend of player movement and used Durant as the main example. Payton did not hate Durant personally. He disliked what the move represented. Payton compared the 1990s to the modern era and said players today avoid long-term battles. Durant became the face of that narrative, and Payton talked about it frequently. There were also personal critiques. Payton did not like the way Durant handled public criticism. Durant argued with fans on social media and clashed with reporters. Payton felt Durant was too sensitive compared to earlier generations who kept everything in the locker room. Payton built his career on confrontation but preferred direct conversation. He never understood Durant's approach and said it contradicted the principles he valued. Durant brushed off the criticism, often saying older players compare eras too harshly. Payton continued to voice his frustration because he believed Durant was too great to let outside noise influence him. On the court, Payton respects Durant completely. Payton calls Durant one of the most unstoppable scorers in league history. He praises Durant's efficiency, skill, and size. The criticism stems from choices, not talent. Payton admires Durant's ability to dominate games, but hates the path Durant took to build his resume. Payton's era shaped his beliefs, and Durant's era challenged them. That clash is why Durant lands on this list, not because of personal conflict, but because of what Payton believes Durant symbolizes in the story of modern basketball. Payton's rivalries were loud, personal, and unforgettable. His list says everything about the era he came from. If you want the next breakdown of NBA beefs, hit like, drop a comment, and make sure you subscribe for more stories coming up.